lost you there. Can't get rid of me that easy.
Well, folks, it's that time. It's finally time to talk about Spider-Man 2. It's here. This is arguably the biggest, I guess I would say this is arguably the biggest launch of any game this year. Maybe Starfield aside, this is probably the biggest game of the year. This will probably be the biggest selling game of the year. Sans maybe Call of Duty. So this is a huge deal. You know, we've been waiting 5 years for a sequel to the 2018 Spider-Man. We got kind of a Spider-Man 1.5 in the Miles Morales game from 2020. And here we are now, finally, at the tail end of 2023 with Spider-Man 2. Insomniac has given us a direct sequel, a follow-up, not just to that 2018 Spider-Man game, but also to the 2020 Miles Morales game. And that's one thing I'll say straight off the bat. This game is a sequel to both. So if you're somebody out there that maybe played the 2018 Spider-Man and did not play Miles Morales, you need to go play Miles Morales before you play this game, because there is so much about that game that you will not, this game specifically, that you will not understand if you have not played Miles Morales. So it is basically essential that you play that game. But let's just kick it off. This is a spoiler review. I am going to be talking about some spoiler things in this review. It's been out long enough, but I'm just gonna let you know ahead of time before I start really getting into the game here or getting into my opinion on it. This is a spoiler review. I wanted to wait at least a week, partially also to give my time to get through the game, and I wanted to be able to talk about it at length. I will also be talking about it at length on the next episode of Podcast 572. My friend Dan and I, Dan on the podcast, insanely huge Spider-Man fan. He is as much a Spider-Man fan as I am a Batman fan. And we have both finished the game. He's actually 100% it. I am still working on getting 100%, but I have finished the story. And I've done enough that I can give a verdict on the game. So let's go ahead and dive in. The first thing I want to say right off the bat, the biggest thing going on, the biggest change with Spider-Man 2 is you are playing as both Peter Parker Spider-Man and Miles Morales Spider-Man in this game. So there are two Spider-Men in this game. You switch between them. You can pretty much switch between them at any time that you want, except if it's a specific mission where it's required for you to play as one or the other. And then, like I said at the beginning of this review, this is very much not only a sequel to the 2018 Spider-Man, but also a sequel to Miles Morales. It deals with story beats and things that happen in both of those games. And on that level, it works as a fantastic sequel and follow-up to both of those games. The opening alone is tremendous and honestly the biggest showpiece and showcase for the PlayStation 5's power. The whole thing going on with Sandman, it's so incredible to watch. There's a part where he just like punches you and you fly through this city. There's no way that could have worked on a PS4. As it was said on the podcast, Dan said his PlayStation would have melted through the floor if that was something that was even attempted on a PS4. And I tend to agree in that case. Like, it is a wild thing that just would not have worked on that level. With all that being said, they do some stuff here. They go for some stuff that I think mostly, for me, it works. The biggest difference here in this story is they are going with Harry becoming Venom. So it's not Eddie Brock. They're going, from my understanding, the Ultimate Spider-Man storyline where the symbiote takes over Harry Osborn. In this universe, the symbiote is like healing Harry's illness. And then it kind of comes out. So like you get a part of this game where Harry's helping you out and he kind of has his own Spider-Man suit. I mean, he finds out very quickly that you're Spider-Man, Peter Parker, whatever. And that's fine. Like, normally I'd be a little put down at something like that, but I was perfectly fine with that revelation in the game. It doesn't really matter. But I will say the circle of people in this game who know who Peter Parker and Miles Morales are is fucking too big. And at the end of this game, and I'll talk about it when we get further into the review, but there's a sequence, like the end credit sequence, that did and did not work for me, and I'll explain why that is. when I get to that part of the review, but it has to come back to the fact that in this game universe, too many people at this point know who Peter Parker is and who Miles Morales is. So you're kind of losing that element. It reminds me of the problem I had with the first Amazing Spider-Man movie, where he took his fucking mask off way too many times to the point that, you know, a character had to tell him, like, you're fucking Spider-Man, put your mask on. You know, like, it's just, it's kind of wild to me. And there's a lot of that in this game, but now you're involving two Spider-Men. So, you know, I always nitpick shit like that because I get finicky when it's like, okay, you have this secret identity now, too many people know about it. But that's me being, you know, a nitpicking comic book fan. So in terms of how this game plays, it plays incredible. It plays just like those previous two games. They do implement some new gameplay here, and that's one of the other things that I have kind of a little issue with this game. There's a little too much going on now. So for example, you know, you have the ability to dodge or block, you know, get out of like a punch or a kick or whatever in combat with circle. Now they've added another layer to that with L1 for heavy attacks, and switching off of those sometimes can become a little confusing and hard to remember. It's almost like they're throwing just a little bit too much at that combat. Another element, gameplay element they add to this game that, I'll be honest, did not work for me is the air gliding. So when it's first introduced at the beginning of the game, when you get the ability to air glide, they literally bring up rings on the screen, and it gave me flashbacks to Superman 64, and I said, fuck no, let's not do this. But thankfully, it is not that bad. However, the actual gliding through the city is very hit or miss for me. Sometimes it seems like it's working incredibly well. Other times it just seems like you're going way too fast. And so the controls feel a little wonky with that. Again, none of these things break the game. None of these things make you take you out of the experience and go, oh, this is a bad game or anything like that. But I just feel like those two new elements did not really work for me. However, the biggest thing that works for me here, again, much like the 2018 Spider-Man and the Miles Morales game, is the quality in the story and the writing, which I think are still top notch. There are some excellent missions here, especially getting to know Harry, bringing him into this universe, explaining to maybe that audience that only knows Spider-Man from the movies or something, who Harry is, why he's such an important element to this universe and to Peter Parker. They do a fantastic job of that. And again, I think the writing is what really shines and stands out here, especially in a world where writing is becoming kind of very shit in TVs and in movies. I think this game is a notch above some of that for sure. One thing I've heard a lot of complaints about online, and I actually disagree here, is the length of the game. So right now, at the time of recording this video, I put about 23 hours in. I just finished the story. I'm about like 50% done with 100% completion. Okay, so I have a little bit to go. From what I've looked at, I have about 5 or 6 hours. I'll easily wrap up 100%ing this game in about 30 hours. And for me personally, I think that's the perfect length for a Spider-Man video game. And I've seen a lot of people be upset and think, oh, I flew through this story in a weekend, and you know, I don't think it's worth $70 and all this stuff. Where I'm just gonna, you know, kind of put my foot down and say, I disagree. I don't want a Spider-Man story in a game that's longer than this, and I certainly do not want a game that is just littered with more collectibles. But let's be fair, if they made this a 100-hour Spider-Man game, that's what you're gonna be getting, a bunch of useless collectibles. I don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. They're not gonna add like a larger map of New York somehow. You know what I mean? So another element of the game I do not care for, and this gets into spoiler territory, so now we're going to kind of talk about spoilers of the game. In terms of the story, while it is incredibly well written, while I enjoy the story for the most part, one thing I do not like here is you bring in a excellent villain like Kraven the Hunter, which I thought was a perfect choice for this game because, again, this is a villain that's not really been used very much in other mediums outside of the comic books. He's a little bit in the cartoon, but that's kind of it. And obviously we got that, you know, Aaron Taylor Johnson movie that got delayed till next year, which will probably not be very good because you know, it's part of the Morbius verse, not the actual Spider-Man MCU stuff. So, but he was done to perfection here. I really liked his arc. However, my one complaint with it is, and again, heavy spoiler, we killed too many Spider-Man villains in this game. The implication here is that Scorpion, Shocker, and I believe 2 other villains who the names are, I'm forgetting right now, are confirmed dead by the end of this game. And that's a bummer because those are cool villains. Why are we didn't need to kill 4 villains to prove a point in this game that Kraven is a bad fucking dude. We didn't need to do that. You could have killed 1. I would have been like, okay, fine. The only one that you really see the death of is Scorpion, and it's pretty brutal. I will say too, like, this game pushes the T rating a few times where I was like, wow, this is, because again, in my head, I'm thinking like, this is a massive fucking game that kids are going to play. Like, small children will play this Spider-Man game. And there are a couple times where I'm like, this game really goes hard on the violence at times, which impressed me. So, but again, the getting back to the complaint here, I don't think we need to kill that many Spider-Man villains to prove a point. Again, this is comic book land. They could write some bullshit to bring those characters back, you know, multiverse, whatever. Dare I say multiverse, but that was a big problem for me in the game. You know, when I look at the story, I'm like, I wouldn't have killed that many villains. The other complaint I've seen out there, and I also disagree with this, is that Venom is underutilized in this game. And I also disagree with this. I think Venom, for the amount that he's in the game, is the perfect and right amount that he's in the game. When Harry finally becomes Venom, when they have their, you know, he has the altercation with Kraven, I think that that's done fine. And I think that spoiler, I didn't even know this when I played the game. There's a brief section where you actually get to play as Venom, which is awesome. I don't know if I want a full Venom game, but I thought it was cool to play as Venom here. His story arc is fine. It's about, I'd say 2/3 of the story are Kraven, and then the last third is Venom. And I think that was the appropriate choice here, even though the game is very heavily marketed as a Venom game. It's technically really impressive. I did run into some glitches. I did see some stupid things, like you have the ability when you're on the street to be fighting with you know, one of the other characters by your side. There is obviously Miles Morales. There's a couple other characters I won't spoil here that kind of show up and will be fighting with you on their side. I had a sequence where I was fighting with Miles Morales, and he just punched a dude through a brick wall and they both disappeared into it. That was cool. And then I had one other game-breaking glitch in this game where I was doing a mission. I actually caught this, so you're seeing the footage right now. I'm fighting, and I get down to the last enemy, and for whatever reason, my hits are just not hitting this character. Like, I'm punching, I'm kicking, I'm doing special moves. They are purposely not hitting this enemy. I had to actually restart the checkpoint and play this part of the mission again. And that's frustrating, and that's stupid to see. But with all that being said, there have been several patches since I started playing this game. I have not seen any other glitches like that. That was very early on. So I'm assuming stuff like that's already been patched out of the game at this point. So last thing I want to say about story, and heavy spoiler here. So the very end of the game, you have 2 end credit sequences, but the one I want to focus on is obviously at the end of the game. Well, I will say, and again, heavy spoiler, Harry is not technically dead. He's just kind of in a coma for life right now. And Norman Osborn obviously is pissed, which is going to lead to him being Green Goblin in the next game. Let's be fair. But the conversation that he has, because what happens is the credit scene is him going to see Otto Octavius in jail, and his whole thing is like, you know who the Spider-Men are, and he kind of, you know, asks like, well, why do you need to know who they are? And this just kind of made me snicker, because I'm like, at this point, so many fucking people in this game universe know who they are. How has this guy not figured it out yet? It's just, I don't know. That scene did not work for me. I felt like for an end credit scene, you could have done something way cooler to set up like, hey, you're going to finally get Green Goblin in this next game. I thought for setting that up, this was kind of a lame way to go around it. So I don't know. That's just my take. But again, But from a story perspective, from a gameplay perspective, I enjoyed the hell out of this game. It is a great sequel to a great PlayStation franchise. And I'll also say, like, we've gotten some very high profile sequels this generation PlayStation for PlayStation exclusives on PS5, you know, with Horizon Forbidden West, God of War Ragnarok. Well, I felt those were a little disappointing. This one actually lived up for me story-wise and gameplay-wise for the most part. So for me, and I'm going back to giving numbers, I've been doing that in movie reviews for a while. I'm going to do that for games again. I'm giving this game an 8 out of 10. I had a really good time with it. It's definitely worth your $70. I think if you were a fan of the other two games, you're going to have a great time with this. It's also a very good game to go buy a PS5 for. So for whatever reason you've been waiting to get a PS5, there is now a large enough library of exclusives, I think, that you could go out and purchase a PS5 and have a good time owning that system. You know, again, we're 3 years into this generation. It's a good time to buy a PS5. So 8 out of 10 for me. That's my final verdict on Spider-Man. I'd love to know in the comments below, what did you think of Spider-Man 2? Did you enjoy it? Did you like it? Whatever. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And as always, until next time.